What up, guys? It's Dom, and welcome to another movie review. Now, this movie right here was recommended to me by Mr. Majoritarian in my first video, and I really regret choosing this one as the next movie because it was god awful. But either way, we're talking about Steel. Steel, released in 1997, written and directed by Kenneth Johnson. Now, this is an origin story of John Henry Irons, also known as Steel or Man of Steel, from the DC universe. And there's one other live action appearance of this character that I know of, and it's in the Arrowverse in the TV show Superman and Lois. And that one was done really well. This one, however, I don't think so. But either way, let's get into the 10 essential aspects of a movie. Plot. Does the movie follow a comprehensive story arc and is plausible within the world that has been created? Now, I'm going to say this off the bat. Of course, it's plausible within the world that has been created, because the world that has been created is the DC universe, okay? They have superhumans, they have super weapons. Like, of course it's plausible. Now, about the plot. It's an origin story, and that part's fine. I'm fine with the origin story part, how John Henry Irons became the Man of Steel. That's fine. But what I didn't like was how expectable the ending was. After the first 5 minutes, I knew exactly how the plot was going to play out, and that bothers me because I like the anticipation factor of watching the whole movie just to have a twist at the end or an unexpected ending, and of course that didn't happen. And there was also way too many Shaq jokes. There was probably 15 to 20 missed free throw jokes in this movie, and that is way too many. I get that it's Shaq. He likes to be funny in the movies, and in like Grown Ups too. That's fine. You're a funny dude. Have at it. But this is a superhero movie, and I feel like they should have treated it more like John Henry Irons, who in the comics I do not believe is actually like a very funny guy. I think he's very serious. He's a soldier. He stops bad guys, not like Spider-Man and Deadpool where they just crack jokes the whole time. But either way, I mean, if they removed a handful more of those jokes, just took them right out of the script, I feel like it probably would have been a way better movie. Attraction. Does the movie have an interesting premise with a high entertainment value? So I will say that it's interesting because it's the first live action iteration of this character. But entertaining, not so much. It was way too cringy for me. All the jokes, the fakeness of it, I guess. It really turned me off. I didn't want to keep watching it. I just knew I had to for the review. If I never watched it, I probably would have been fine with it. Now, in Superman and Lois, Wole Parks plays John Henry Irons, and he did a phenomenal job. Now, I don't know if they learned from this movie and knew what not to do, but I mean, it just looked better. He sounded better. I don't know. Maybe it's just because this was in the 90s. Maybe in the 90s this was a banger, but not in 2024, man. Theme. What message or truth is the movie trying to convey? Now, I think the theme of this movie is revenge. John Henry Irons gets revenge on the bad guy, and the bad guy gets revenge on the army. I mean, that's the whole point of the movie. Now, if it's not that, then this movie doesn't have a theme. Dialogue. Is there a real feel to the conversations? Now, if I haven't made it obvious already, there was way too many jokes in this movie. The dialogue was honestly pretty terrible. It was way too cringy. It seemed fake and honestly pretty forced. So I'm not even going to spend my time going over this. It was just all bad. There was no good points in dialogue. Acting. Are the characters convincing? Now, I don't know what else you want me to say, guys, but the acting was just as bad as the dialogue. Okay. Shaq plays John Henry Irons, also known as Steel, and Annabeth Gish plays Susan Sparks, Steel's Oracle, because she's just another woman in a wheelchair behind the computer telling him where to go. Now, I don't think Steel actually has one of those in the comics. I think they just took this from Batman, but I mean, I honestly, I don't know. That's all I could think about the entire time I saw her on the screen. But they also did in the first scene, and in every scene, every single time they stopped talking, they ended their conversation with a little ET phone home finger touch. I don't know why they did it. It added nothing. It just made the movie even more cringy. So I don't know what the hell you're doing, Kenneth, but stop making this movie so cringy. Cinematography. Is there a creative use of lighting, setting, and wardrobe to convey emotion. So before we get into the emotional parts, let's just talk about the wardrobe, okay? It looked like your mom went to Walmart, bought you the first night costume that they can see, made out of rubber and cloth, and just, there's your suit. There you go, Steel. Go save the world in your floppy metal helmet and your clearly cloth, hand exposed suit, right? And the hammer that Steel uses, now he does have the hammer in the comics and in the other live action in Arrowverse. But this time, in this movie, it wasn't even used as a hammer. All right? They just click a button and it turns into a gun. Okay. Why make it a hammer? Because you're supposed to use it as a hammer. It's supposed to be an extremely strong hammer that you can use basically super strength with it. But instead, they just turned it into a Nerf gun. Okay. I don't know why. It completely, I was waiting for the one scene that he finally got to use it as a hammer, and he never did. And about the emotional parts, at the beginning of the movie was supposed to be the most emotional moment of the whole movie, and they ruined it. The acting was terrible. It just completely, I wasn't even sad. I was happy the scene was over, honestly. So, Kenneth, man, you're killing me. Editing. This is all about the pacing of the movie. So this movie is an hour and 37 minutes. I mean, I'm glad it wasn't a 2-hour movie, but this should have been a 30-minute movie. This should have been a Shaquille O'Neal short film that just had the badass parts and that's it. That honestly would have been a better review. But because they decided to have, I don't know, 45 minutes, so half of the movie basically, in grandma's house talking about nothing relevant, come on, man. Do better, all right? This movie should have been way shorter. They should have removed all those points. It wasn't important. It did not add anything to the origin story. Come on, man. Soundtrack. Now, I was surprised by this, but honestly, out of all the movies I reviewed so far, this has the best soundtrack, all right? It felt just like the 90s. Shaq's Straight Playin' song was in this movie, and honestly, it was a banger, all right? And I mean, for how bad this movie was, I'm at least glad that listening to it wasn't the worst thing in the world. Directing. So the director is Kenneth Johnson, and obviously he's to blame for this monstrosity of a movie. But I'm not even gonna blame him. He only did TV shows in the 70s, and then this is the one movie he did in the 90s, and nothing had good reviews. So I guess he should have just learned from his mistakes and not taken this film. All right, he should have had someone else direct it. Maybe it would have been for the better. I don't know. Not to diss you, Kenneth, but this movie was pretty ass. Time. Does it stand the test of time? I mean, this movie's not going to stand for no time. All right. I mean, it's been 27 years. The only reason I knew about it or anyone knows about it is because Shaq is the star. And if he wasn't the star, this movie would be completely irrelevant. Reviews. Now, all these reviews are super low, and it met my expectations because I thought they were going to be very low, and they were. Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it an 8%. Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 19%, and IMDb gave it a 30%. Now, I would probably give it a 25%, so I would have to be right in between audience and IMDb. But, man, this movie, I can't say it enough. This movie should not have been made. Rankings. So I've done 3 movie reviews so far, and none of them were in the 90s. So it's going to be first in 1997 and first in the 1990s. Now, for all time, this word's going to be different because it's going to be third, also known as last. And I don't see it getting knocked off the bottom because, I mean, if SWAT Firefight was a pretty bad movie, and it was better in every way than this movie. It was even funnier, even though that wasn't meant to be a funny movie. It was somehow funnier just because of how cringy this movie was. So if you guys think of a worse movie, please comment it down below. I would love to see this get knocked off the bottom. I don't see it happening, but I mean, a man can dream, right? So I hope you guys enjoyed this movie review. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and make sure to comment that bad movie. Peace out.